So we're going to put together the Z bearing carriage. This is a mostly glued together part, and these are the components that you'll need. I'm just going to get my glue board and pop it there for the minute. So with these components, you'll notice that there's little numbers inscribed on one side. There is a sequence to the way that this goes together, and it needs to be in this sequence. So we've just got to follow that. So I'm going to take this part here, and we'll start loading in some of these parts, these other little parts. I'm going to start with number 2. Seems a bit strange, but it does actually slot into this, to that top there like that. And number 5, which slots in the bottom spot here. And we've just got to make sure that they're really well seated in their spot. That's good. 1 and 6 just sit there when we're gluing it together. So the next one to get in is 3 and 4. Now we've got this little hex nut there. I'm just going to pop that in between those to hold them in the right spot, like that. So you can see that in there. Hex nut just makes sure that they stay separated. So I'm now going to take one of these little pieces here, and we'll just slot that down in here, holding all of these in place. There we go. And we'll fit that down. Now that should hold these little center ones in place, but I think I might just leave the hex nut in there for the moment till we get all of this other side assembled. These are relatively delicate, so best not to force them. So I just, again, want to make sure that they're really well seated down in there. Now, I think the nut is quite tight in there, so that's an indicator that we're going to have to do a little bit of work a little bit later on just to make this a really good slip condition. I'm going to actually leave that nut in there when we're gluing it. And so we're going to put number 6 down on after 5. Make sure that you find the right spot to put it. So that's after 5, and number 1 sits at the top there. Now I'm just going to pop some glue and let that sit for a moment. Just want to make sure before that glue sets that all of these little ridges line up, the peaks of the triangles. Look pretty good. Okay, so that's now fixed in place. I'm just going to push that hex nut out. It's a half nut, and load some of these bearings on. Take that back out of the way. Now this little piece here is a tie bar, and that sits between these two M3 by 16 button heads. Now the hole is a little bit tight there, so you might have to screw them in. They don't need to be threaded, but there we go. But there. and that sits in two of those holes. Now the reason for the tie bar is we can get a little bit of play in here. These holes aren't round, they're actually positioned on a circle, so that this whole part can revolve around the center line. It just means that we can align our angles perfectly, so that we get the rails aligned well with the lifter, the Z lifter. So now I'm just going to pop a washer on there and a washer on there, two of those bearings, the V-groove bearings, and a nut. We'll just do them up loosely for the moment, because I still want that to have a degree of play. And then I'll pop this other little 12mm machine screw in there. And this one can be done up quite tightly. That's good. Now, the next thing to do is set your half nut into this hole. Now do it really gently, because these do have a tendency to break. They're pretty fine. Just going to push that in all the way home. Now, that sits in the center here. If that goes in and it's tight fitting, we need to do a little bit of sanding. So I'm just going to get the wet and dry. And the nut needs to be sanded down. I might actually take that out of the part for the moment, because I think, yeah, the actual plastic part slides really easily, but the nut doesn't. So I'm just going to work that nut down. Give it a little bit of a wipe. Try it back in here again. Oh, it's getting pretty good. Needs a little bit more. Just a bit sticky. We want it to be as close, like a really close tolerance fit in there. The closer fit it is, the less backlash we're going to have in that system. So you just don't want to take too much material off. Now, depending on the material thickness of the acrylic part, you might have to take a little bit off that as well, but let's just see this. See how this goes. Now that should shake around in there and be a nice loose fit. So I'm just going to take a little bit of material off this plastic part as well. Reseat this hex nut. Gently. Still feels like I've got a bit of resistance in there. So I might take a little bit more material off with the plastic in situ. That's better. Alright, now we'll pop this part in. Get rid of that first. Okay, so now putting this in on the angle. Okay. Now that should rattle around wonderfully, that's it. Okay. We need 2 of these.